Hi guys, it's Pauline here. I thought I would just hop on here and give a quick update about my injury and also just kind of share things that I've been realizing and learning through the past month. So, yeah. Okay, it's been like 4.5 weeks since my initial injury. If you guys don't know, I fractured my elbow 4.5 weeks ago. I was running, playing a game with some friends, and I tripped and I broke my fall by fully extending my arm, and it hit the concrete like that. And so I got a fracture in my radial head bone in my elbow. And I just started physical therapy, and I'm hopeful to regain mobility as I continue to do the exercises. And it was really encouraging because yesterday I was able to pick up the guitar and kind of play it again for the first time in over a month. So I'm really excited about that, and I'm excited to continue to make music and to create. As of now, I can contract my arm around this much before it starts really straining. It doesn't really go much farther than that. It should be able to go all the way. And extending wise is a little bit better. About that much. So I'm gonna be doing these exercises and see how much progress I make. But I've been learning a lot through this process. And the biggest thing that I've been learning about is just consistency. And that's like a lesson that I've really been, I feel like God is really trying to teach me right now. A lot of things I've been reading online, my physical therapist, they all say that really the restoration of full mobility in my elbow hinges on how consistent I am with these exercises. So I've heard a lot of stories too from other people who've gotten injuries that if they weren't consistent with their exercises, it really affected the restoration of their full mobility, the recovery process. And so, yeah, I've been learning a lot through that. And of course, it's so poignant of a lesson too, because I've been learning that lesson through so many different things. I feel like God's really trying to teach me that this year. I also been trying to grow a plant recently. I'm sure you guys have seen it in my recent videos and in my worship flows too, but it's a fig leaf. And I was traveling for around 2 weeks a month ago, and I was gone, and my housemate accidentally overwatered it. And so when I got back, a lot of the leaves were brown. And so now I've been trying to recover it, and I'm really learning that consistency is key, even with growing plants too, and it's the same with YouTube. It's also the same with, trying to grow any skill, trying to recover an injury, and also with relationships and friendships too. I'm really learning that small acts daily of just kind of sending a text to check in, or calling a friend very spontaneously and FaceTiming them for like 20 minutes, that's really going to add up and do more for your relationship or your friendship or even for a family than trying to do grandiose gestures like once every 6 months, because that really builds trust, and that really is going to be beneficial for the relationship long term. So yeah, and I'm learning that consistency, it seems like it's easy, but it's actually way harder than you would think. Way harder than you would think. When you first make a resolution or goal for yourself, you try to make it manageable, you try to make it achievable and doable, but it's often not the act itself that is difficult. It's the consistency and learning how to trust that even though it seems like it's not important in the moment, even if it takes like 5 minutes every day, it's really going to add up. So it takes faith, it takes trust, and it takes a lot of maturity to be consistent. And I feel like consistency is a fruit of maturity, if that makes sense. And even when I look back on my early 20s, I feel like I was so inconsistent because I didn't have the maturity to understand what I'm realizing now. Even emotionally, my emotional state was a lot more up and down, a lot more unstable, and I would always do things very haphazardly. I would have phases where I'm going crazy, really into something, whether it's a new hobby or some discipline, and then I would fizzle out and burn out so easily. And maybe it's also just like my personality type too. I'm very intense, but I tend to fizzle out really easily. And so now I'm learning the power of kind of burning at a lower temperature, but going longer, yeah, growing up, I was raised moving around every other year. I moved from the East Coast of the US to the West Coast. I lived in NorCal, I lived in SoCal, I lived in Orange County, I lived in Santa Monica, I lived in South Korea, in Seoul, lots of different places there. I moved to the UK, I moved back to Pasadena, back to the UK to a different city, and then back to California. So my world and my environment was changing so often that I don't think I ever really learned that lesson of consistency. My parents were very busy in ministry and at work, so we didn't like get any lessons for anything. And I think I really would have learned that discipline and the power of discipline and consistency if I had maybe had a more stable environment to grow up in. And I didn't even see the importance of it now, but I'm really learning that now. And this lesson of consistency, it shows up in my healing process too. As I've been continuing on my healing journey, healing from the past, healing from, my childhood wounds and things like that. I've been reading this book called It Didn't Start With You by Pauline. I highly recommend it. And it talks about how there's so much power in practicing imagining healing images and speaking healing sentences. And practicing that day by day actually eventually changes our brain on a neural level to rewire our thought patterns from the old traumatic thought patterns or trauma-based thought patterns towards new positive healing thought patterns. And as we practice those images, whether it's like the image of the person who hurt you giving you a hug, or practicing, speaking sentences of forgiveness and gratitude, those images rewire your brain to think of those positive thought patterns when you're triggered or when that trauma starts to come up. And over time, through practice, we can slowly direct energy away from those old thought patterns in our brain and create new neural brain maps for ourselves. And it talks about the importance and the scientific evidence for prayer and things like that help us to do that. And so I was really inspired by that as well. And I'm just continuing to learn that in so many areas of my life. So I don't know, I am trying to implement that little by little into my life, be it in my family relationships, my friendships, not trying to do too much in one day, but seeing the value, the importance of small things every day in my relationships, even with creating too. Even if I sit down and I don't end up with a song, or I write a part of a song that I don't really care for, it's still building my writing muscles, it's still exercising my creativity, and that does have a significance in the long term. I'm hopefully trying to learn that through recovering my plant and through just continuing my healing process as well. And I feel like it's really going to kind of free me and heal me of my perfectionism because I feel like my perfectionism was kind of rooted in fear, that fear that the result of whatever I create or whatever I do is going to be disappointing to me, more than anyone. But as I continue to practice and like really teach myself that 9 times out of 10 done is better than perfect, I feel like it will really free me to like do everything that I want to do and to create freely and to just not let fear be a motivator for anything that I do or I don't do, because fear is just like a phantom feeling based off a hypothetical scenario, And so I feel like it'll really help me to overcome my perfectionism too. And like I feel like consistency is a big part of stewardship, which is another thing I'm really learning recently, how consistency is a big part of being faithful to steward everything that God has given us, and it teaches us how to cherish every day and how to really view every day as an opportunity to be faithful and to view every day as something that's precious, to view my time as valuable and just be a good steward. And I feel like that is an attitude that God wants to create in me, and I feel like it's an attitude that God can really work with, So those are my thoughts. Those are my revelations recently. Please continue to pray for me for healing in my elbow and restoration of full mobility. I want to be able to, create without having to think about this and just, So once again, thanks for watching, and I hope to see you in the next video. Bye!